Welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Clemens Hoffman. Each week we will discuss tools, tips, and ways to radiate your best life ever, interviewing practitioners, authors, and luminaries to help you on your path. Wellness, joy, peace, abundance. What do you want to radiate? Hello and welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. Today I am joined by Peta Morton from all the way from France to talk about Peta's book, Ancient Teachings for Modern Times, The Way to a Rich and Deeply Satisfying Life. Through this book, Peta radiates curiosity, which is, of course, the desire to learn more, to know more, to create more. Welcome, Peta. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been such a pleasure.
Yeah, hi, Christy. Really excited to be here. Thank you for having me on here.
Lovely.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Oh, me too. We've been trying for a while.
Yeah, it's 2020. Come on, what do you expect? You learn to flow with it.
I want a do-over for this whole year. Oh, my Lord. Yeah, you just go with the flow, right? So you're a Reiki master.
Yeah, I teach Reiki. I teach Reiki, and I don't like that master term. I think Reiki's the master. I'm just somebody that shows up and goes, "Wow, isn't that interesting?" Yeah, I think all you can do is just show up and share what you learn, and just keep hoping that you improve along the way and sharing as you. Yeah, I struggle with that whole "I'm a Reiki master" title.
Yeah. Well, and then there's the whole master-slave, masculine, feminine, the whole thing coming along with the word master. So,
Reiki teacher.
Absolutely. But Reiki is a powerful modality. And in skimming through your book and looking through your book, Reiki comes out in just every page, every aspect, because Reiki is universal life. It's that life force energy, and it seems to just come out.
Oh, that's lovely that you say that. That's because that's kind of the intention when I wrote it. It was, for me, Reiki's not. It's more than just a technique. I mean, it's just a word for who we are, really. So and that's what I really wanted to share is, what are these processes that are going on all around us all the time that most of us aren't even aware of. So.
Yeah, all these things that are at play that we're not necessarily cognizant of, that we're not necessarily aware of. But it's that spark of that Reiki is that spark of curiosity that underlies everything, that spark of life that informs, that educates, that just touches all. Maybe I'm getting a little bit too philosophical here, but
but it is a big question, isn't it? For me, it really is. It's like the stuff from which everything is founded on. Absolutely. Whether it's material or thought or energy, it's just this life force that it's that thing that keeps us all alive. And I think even that carries on, consciousness, I suppose, that goes on beyond beyond death. And it's just that substance. It's constantly evolving and changing and becoming, condensed and static and material and lighter and more ethereal and more spiritual. And, it's constantly evolving and constantly changing and conscious. So it fascinates me. For me, it's so much more than just a healing technique. Although I love that part of it too. I have a Reiki practice, and I love doing healing work. But for me, it's so much more than it's who we are. Really, it's our essence. It's our our true self.
Right. I'm a Sunday school teacher, and I teach my Sunday school kids about, when it's not COVID, right? We rub our hands together really briskly, we pull them apart, we feel that energy, and we just talk about how that energy flows through us, through everything around us. That is the life force energy that animates everything, and that does. I keep coming back to this word curiosity that we're radiating today, because without that spark of curiosity, that spark of life just is not quite as bright. And I don't know, maybe I'm thinking about this a little bit too hard. So ancient teachings for modern times. So, you know, why ancient teachings for modern times? What was the journey that brought you to bringing this incredible book into the world?
I wanted to share, I came into this really late in life off the back of, I had a run-in with cancer, lost my business, lost a lot financially, like typical dark night of the soul stuff, that's pretty, you hear it all the time. And that's kind of why I'm so excited about what's going on at the moment, everything that's happening. I'm a bit... I have to be careful how I say this, because I don't want to say like I get great pleasure in death and loss, but there's something really, really exciting that happens when we're in a desperate place. That we find ourselves going inside and asking for things in a way that we would never, asking for help, and it puts us in a place of surrender, really, where things open up, and that's kind of what happened to me. I got in every aspect of my life was pretty much disintegrating, which is a real blessing. And
say that. Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that. That was a blessing, because you can either choose to see it as a blessing or as the worst thing that ever happened.
Oh, totally transformed my life. Totally. I was really materialistic and very competitive, very wrapped up in... I was thinking about it tonight, actually. I was thinking, I wasn't even really competitive for my stuff. I was competitive for what my kids were achieving. It was like a double layer of... and it had to be the best business. I'm constantly trying to prove myself and, comparing, and I'm never satisfied. And I'm cool with the fact that we're never satisfied, because I don't think we're not meant to be. So I think the day we get satisfied is the day we stop evolving. And I think we're meant to always kind of hanker after something new, or a new experience, or a new thing to, a new toy, or... So I don't think that will ever stop. But, we a lot of us just get in that loop, and nothing really satisfies that. You're just waiting for the next thing, and you might have an experience or something new arrives in your life. And I was happy for, a nanosecond, and then I'd want something else. It wasn't, and nothing was enough. And I just found I was really, really unhappy on so many levels. On the face of it, I had everything. I had a lovely family, a nice life, a nice business. But, underneath it all, that whole spiritual aspect was totally, totally missing. And it was all about me. Life was all about, what about me? What's in it for me? It didn't even enter my head, what... Sometimes it did. I've always been one of life's helpers, but a lot of the time I was very focused on, what do I get out of this then? Right. Whether it was prestige or a thing, or, I was, and look at me, here I am. Here I am. Yeah. And so when that fell away, when I lost my health, and that identity I'd created, this successful estate agent, and the horsewoman. I have, you have all these labels that I had for myself, and a mum. Of course, the kids then grow up and they leave home, and all these things, they all fell away. And I was left there thinking, well, who am I then? What is it that I want? And all I had was fear. I was just so worried. When I got sick, lost a lot of money, got in a lot of debt on the back of being off work for, self-employed and off work for so long. And I just lived in, constant nagging terror, really. That inside me, just that feeling of, it's interesting, it still ripples up. Somebody shared a beautiful blog post the day before yesterday, and it really touched me. And she described about going to the cash point or to pay the checkout, at the checkout at the till, and you put the code in, and that moment where you're waiting, thinking, oh, is it going to say payment accepted? Or you go to the letterbox and you have that knot in your stomach, and you're thinking, what's going to be in there? Because there was never anything good in there. So everything, I was constantly focused, constantly worrying about, would I pay the bills? What was going to be in the fridge for the kids to eat? All that stress. And I had no idea. Nobody had ever taught me about, these simple things like the law of attraction, or how we really do create our reality. And nobody taught me how to manage that fear. What do you do with that at 3 o'clock in the morning when your mind's going, what if, what if, what if? And just creating all these stories. And so I wanted to share really what helped me, simple things that I think we should have. I'm just astounded we don't teach our kids. It's so basic. And it's the stuff that's being kept pretty much, for years, for elite little groups, or exclusive groups. Maybe it's, the Freemasons, or it was, the pagan arts, but very sort of peripheral. And it's like, I wanted my mum to be able to, I want my kids to say, wow, this is how energy works. This is how, this is the mechanism of consciousness. This is what happens. This is what happens when I have thoughts and emotions, and I have a choice about how I perceive a situation. And it was the stuff I was, when I started teaching Reiki, I quickly became very aware that we're so bogged down in the techniques. These are the hand positions, and this is how you call the energy in. And it didn't sit right with me. It's like, well, we're not ever disconnected from it. It's not something you turn on and off. We're doing this stuff all the time, whether we're aware of it or not. And then what I wanted to do is share something that made people aware of what's going on under the surface, or what we're actually creating for ourselves, and where we get stuck. And, just silly little things, such simple exercises that just made such a difference to my life,
Well, let's back up a little bit. How long ago was this chapter, this Dark Night of the Soul?
I suppose it ended. Was it 2012 seems to be the year that most people seem to be talking. So it's only about 10 years ago now.
Yeah. Okay. So all that long ago.
No, it must be more than that. It must be more than that. I've been teaching for about 10. I've been practicing for about 10 years now. So probably about 10 or 11 years ago anyway. Right. But, for years leading, it was a long, slow, it was a very Plutonic thing. These are long, I love astrology. So these are the outer planets, and they're transformative. So they take a long time to pass through, when they're tearing your life away. But they're basically just stripping out everything that wasn't real.
Right. And so you had been bogged down in what wasn't real. Like so many of us. I was in that place as well. So much of the world is in that place where we don't really understand what's going on. We don't understand the power of the moment, about being the power of being present, etc. Was it the cancer? Was it losing your business that caused you to jumpstart this? What caused you to turn toward this idea?
The cancer started. My husband had a fall from the roof, and I. And it was quite interesting actually when I was sat in. When I was in hospital, you're all lined up with other people having chemo, and you all chat to each other. And pretty much all of the women there were all people who'd cared for somebody for a long period of time, and had felt that they had no control over their circumstances. Lots of responsibility, lots of pressure, and we all seem to have got through that bit. And then the minute that pressure's taken off, everything collapses. Sure. So my husband had to fall off the roof, and he'd smashed himself up, pretty badly, couldn't cut his food. I had a business I was running. We had 9 ponies, 2 kids, and no support system, nobody that I could say help. So that kind of, I felt I got very much in that place of powerlessness, like there's nothing I can do to change it. I could have done lots of things to change it. Yeah. And I could have seen the whole situation very differently as well. I could have been feeling and actually feeling very angry and resentful at the fact that he'd had this accident, and then beating myself up because I'm a good person and he's hurting and I shouldn't feel these conflicting emotions. I wouldn't feel that if I was a nice person. I wouldn't want to gouge his eyes out for leaving me in this. So that, that long held sort of simmering anger and resentment, which is so corrosive. But instead of expressing it or asking for help or doing something to change the situation, of course, then you internalize. I internalized it and stuffed it down and, you put that face on. And then there was a moment when just after I got my cancer diagnosis, and I remember we'd had that conversation about, do I tell the kids or not? I think I can probably muddle through this, and they probably won't ever have to know. Their mum's got no hair and no eyebrows, but, I didn't want to, again, I'm so used to propping everybody up that I didn't want to show that weakness. And then I luckily had a very wonderful doctor who said, and what would your kids do if they noticed and they needed some help and you hadn't shared that with them? How would they ever be able to trust you? Who would they go to? So she got my mind right. But I was laying in bed next to them, and they'd been watching a film together. Teenage girls don't normally sleep together, but they just happened to have fallen asleep. And I sort of snuggled in between the two of them. And I just remember lying there thinking, oh, my God, I might not actually be there to see them grow up. I might miss this and miss their children. And then all of a sudden things became things that I'd just taken for granted. Oh, I have truth bumps. the things that I'd really taken for granted just suddenly became incredibly precious. Like there'd be a ray of light, or you'd see it I'd stop and I would smell it. They say stop to smell the roses. I hadn't been. I'd been racing around chasing commissions and wanting the nicest house on my website because I sold big posh country houses. So it was, and all of a sudden I found I had a different perspective on what was important in life, and it wasn't the flashy car, and it's the really simple things, watch. And so that, and then I lost, we had a pony that we'd worked with for a few years. We used to take in ponies that were way beyond our budget and bring them on for owners for competition ponies. And this pony, we had sort of, again, ambition, winning. That was my, it was my thing. And she got to the highest level, and she actually went to jump for France around the Nations Cup. So she was really good. And she became so valuable that the owners had to, they had offers every time they went out. They were getting offers by all these super wealthy people. So again, that loss when she went, that was the thing that really did for me. It was that was the dream, and it was also seeing my kids' dreams being taken away as well. And that was kind of the last straw. That was the one that had me silly. It was, for anybody else, it's a nothing event, but for me, it was. She'd kind of been the one that had seen me through all my chemo, the kids and this pony. It gave me something to hang on to. And so when she went as well, I sat at the side of the road just sobbing. And for the first time ever, I said, help me. help me. I just can't do this. I don't know. I wasn't quite that polite, you know.
We're being honest here, honey.
No, I mean, for me, these days, it's like I'm having a conversation with another part of myself. It's like a friend. And I was angry. I was hurting, and it was like, I don't know what to do. Really help me. And the minute I said that, everything started to change. And that surrender, we don't do it enough. We don't ask.
Absolutely. So how did things start to change?
Within 20 minutes, I had a friend of mine who'd been she'd been paying a small fortune to a law of attraction coach, and I originally thought, I looked at her and I thought, oh my God, you're just nuts. You might as well go and burn your money, you know. But being that I was struggling financially at the time, she phoned me up out of the blue and she said, oh, there's a law of attraction conference on in London. She said, do you fancy going? And I said, well, I can't afford to go to London. Oh, no, somebody's dropped out. It's all paid for. Come. And it's really interesting because it was put on by these super wealthy women. And my idea of money was so unhealthy. If I had to we did an exercise the other day where you have to sort of characterize your representation of money. And mine was kind of very Donald Trump, actually.
Oh, God help you.
Yes. But and no wonder I wasn't bringing anything in because I was repulsed by it. I'd seemed to have moved from this commission chasing materialistic person to, I'm so spiritual, and forgotten there was a middle ground somewhere. And I had a really unhealthy perspective about money. So about money and everything that was, all my estate agency, not all of them, I have to be careful what I say because some of them might be listening, but a lot of them very wealthy, but they've got their money through arms dealing and fracking and all these.
Right.
So for me, that's what money was. And when we got to this event, it was full of these incredibly inspiring women who had got not just the law of attraction, but they really got it, everything else about how energy flows and emotion and but incredibly compassionate. And everything they were putting in that they were getting back, they were plowing back in. They had projects all over the place. The conference they put on was for peanuts to help other women. They were sharing what they knew and what they'd learned that had turned their lives around. They were so I got hooked on the whole law of attraction thing, and still very materialistic, but little by little you start realizing that it's not just about stuff. And then you start realizing how consciousness works and how our emotions fuel our thoughts, and and once you dive down that rabbit hole, then it's a never-ending fascination.
Well, and you can't go back once you start to see things.
You can't unknow it.
You can't, and everything is forever changed.
Yeah, and I had this amazing experience while I was at the conference. They did this very simple eye gazing exercise. You stare into somebody's eyes of a stranger, and it's the first time ever I really felt like. It's the first time I had a real sense of connection, and just this huge heart opening that's beyond anything. Just a real energetic feeling. But I grinned for about 3 weeks afterwards. It was like, just so expansive. And then going back to the flat that we were staying in, and there was a Reiki teacher who said, you really should learn Reiki. And I'd never even heard of it. And it's so, literally within a weekend, everything pivoted. And so I learned Reiki, and it was literally, I felt like it wasn't a new skill. I just felt like I'd come home. It was like, oh, this feels comfortable. I know this. This is who I. Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying it. I remember that, you get that buzz, and I just open, and it's like, I remember. I get this. I remember what this is. I'm comfortable with it.
I genuinely call Reiki the gateway drug, because it opens up so many things for you.
Yeah.
Once you understand the flow of energy, how it works, how it flows through you, and what the energy does, it just opens up so many different possibilities.
Yeah.
So that was really your first toe dip into this world.
Yeah, although it went very, very quickly after that. I spent, I had some experience before even starting the Reiki. I think the minute you're open to that, then, Spirit's there saying, okay, thank heavens, let's go, come on. So I'd started having experiences, but very quickly after that, I'd never felt energy moving before. I was just a body and a mind and emotions. And all of a sudden I'd see, your intuition just opens up. So I'd see energy, I'd see patterns, I'd know claircognizance, just knowing stuff.
Feeling.
The feeling. But then having a succession of really, spot awakening experiences, so out of body experiences, spontaneous out of body experiences, and finding yourself flying through the cosmos and then going, I am the cosmos, so these just and lots of visions, which still go on to this day. Actually, I wake, I go to bed with a question, come back to that endlessly curious thing. I go to bed with a question about whatever it happens to be that day. And I wake in the early hours of the morning. I often get vibrated awake. The vibrations wake me. And I know all manner of stuff that I have absolutely no way of knowing from my rational mind. So I spend ages hovering in that, that, what do they call it? The liminal space. It's the trendy word for it now, isn't it? In between, when you're half awake and half asleep. Isn't
that lovely? It's such a wonderful, magical place to be. And it's hard to even imagine not being there as you were before. I'm looking through your bio, and you used to be a police officer. Hard to imagine. That must have been some time ago.
It's a change. It's I think it's wonderful, actually, because
absolutely.
I'm seeing, especially women, not just women, but these things have been so fringe and so, these are. I just feel like we're reclaiming all these old arts that we've left behind. I'm seeing women that are getting into herbalism and essential oils, and, they're working in groups, they're doing intention work together. And I was so freaked out about this. I blogged anonymously for 2 years before I told anybody what I was doing. My family thought I'd gone completely nuts.
I was wondering about that.
But the policing is, I've always very much on the helping side.
Yes.
I've never been one to be stood there at the side of the road, wanted to nab you for speeding or for drink driving, or it was all, as I said before, it's a bit perverse really, but I love to be around when people are in difficulty. I like is it a feeling of being useful? I don't know, but there's a lot of parallels, actually, sitting there when people are really desperate. I did a lot of work with women who have been raped and child abuse and, serious crimes. So you almost always were sat there with somebody who just had their house burgled, or, and I would always be the one that would volunteer to go and give the death messages. And it's not because I'm bizarrely attracted to people's pain. I don't think it's that. I think it's just that you can smooth the path for people at difficult times. And that's always, when people are struggling, there's a way that you can be with somebody when life's tough for them. So it's not that, you always see the police, and especially at the moment, the horrendous images of the police that are coming out.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that wasn't my experience of policing. My experience of policing was, sitting with somebody or even with offenders, because often they had the most horrendous stories. They didn't just arrive there, on a whim. That there's a whole family history behind, and just being able to sit there with somebody, and they'd share much more. If you were genuinely compassionate towards them and kind towards them, then they would open up. So it's not that different to what. But I love, investigation. I love investigation.
Absolutely.
And I love that about the Reiki work I do now. It's like the most interesting bit of what I'm doing now, I think, is more so than the healing work. I love to use Reiki, in the same way that you do hypnotherapy, really, to get answers to questions. So working with scientists that have got questions on, I don't know, we've just done a study with on genetics, the genetics of psychic ability, and we've been using precognitive stuff to go and try and get answers for questions that haven't actually been asked by the scientists. They're going to ask the questions after we've done we've just finished. We've just given our answers to some random. They used a random number generator, and we've just given our answers to what we intuited in relation to these codes. And now they're going to go back independently to all the scientists, and the scientists will then set the questions. Because
that's fascinating.
Yeah, so we can see, they wanted to show about precognition, and also that the whole time space, the time is really just everything exists now. So using it for, helping scientists with things I don't need to know. I don't know anything about genetics, but and the same with, I have a group of crazy boys I hang out with from time to time on Facebook, and they're doing all these, these crazy cymatics experiments, or they're trying to get their plasma drivers to work, and you just get these little insights that go in and say, well, maybe you want to change that for. Put some copper in there. That might be. These things come from nowhere, and or whether it's just sitting with a client and saying, why am I feeling? What's this emotion I've got going on within me? Why am I feeling this particular emotion? Or why do I have this image in my head? Why do I have an image of a young boy with a football on his? Oh, yeah, that was when I was a boy. He had a football on his. I remember seeing a boy with a football on his side. And when I was doing a session with a guy who was in his mid-50s, and he'd say, well, what's that all about? And he said, oh, my dad was so disappointed with me because I was useless at football.
Oh,
and in his 50s, all of a sudden, this realization that all his life he's just thought he was useless. He was worthless because of a couple of football matches when he was 7 or 8. So that for me is the fascination with this energy that we're working with. Just always asking questions. Always, why? What am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? And and what can I turn it into? How can I do this differently?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Did you know that Radiate Wellness has a subscription-based premium content Facebook group? Think of it like the premium version of this free podcast. In this premium Facebook group, you can find great content like replays of online classes, meditations on angels, chakras, mindfulness, and more, guest speakers, mini classes, polls, plus you'll be the first to know of guests that we have scheduled for the podcast and can submit questions for them. You get all of this great content for one low monthly price, and the first month is half off. You can subscribe by going to radiatewellnesscommunity.com/shop. Click the subscriptions button and you're in. Also, while I have your attention, wherever you're listening to this free podcast, if you could just do us a couple of favors, please. One is go to hit the subscribe or follow button. Then you'll be notified of all of the episodes we have coming out each week. Also, please rate and review. It sounds really simple, but it helps us to grow our audience when people are looking for great podcasts. And when we grow our audience, we can do bigger and better things and bring you even more great guests. So please do those couple of things, and that will help us grow this audience and this podcast. Thank you so much for listening.
So let's turn it back to your book, Ancient Teachings for Modern Times. These ancient teachings that you put in your book, where did you collect them from, and why did you decide that you wanted to write about this and bring this forward?
Because I think, especially now, in fact, I don't think I realized when I wrote it, but, looking back to 2020, it's kind of, I didn't realize I was writing it for now, right. But I knew they were really useful skills. They made such a massive difference to my life. Really, I genuinely hardly ever worry. I just won't beat myself up with it anymore, and I've learned how to, even if I'm in a really difficult situation, I can always change my perspective on things. And they were just so simple. I wanted to be able to share them, and I wanted to share them with my Reiki students who didn't get that. They were just learning techniques, and they were missing the crux of what consciousness is all about. And also because I felt quite angry. I'm a Mars in the Sun in Aries. I'm quite I have to temper that. But I could see that people with in positions of quite considerable power, quite clearly, the more I learned, I was seeing that people did have an understanding of how this stuff worked, but it was just being used to gain wealth and more power, and I just thought, no, this is for all of us. This is just basically human, and it felt so important. And now that we've got to this period that we're in now, we can feel it. We all know we're in a period of massive transformation. Well, if you go into that consciously, or at least more and more people become aware of how we create our reality.
Yes.
When we're confronted with these awful, seemingly awful things, I get so excited when I see what's happening. I'm seeing this stuff disintegrating. But, from experience, from sitting with those people who've had the catastrophes, and from having my own dark night of the soul, and, I see it day in, day out. When people are in that dark place, that's when the breakthroughs happen.
Magic happens.
So if we know how to focus and how to amplify whatever we're focused on, how to say, okay, we get so stuck on what we don't want.
Yes, absolutely.
We're totally focused on, I don't want that thing. And what most of us don't realize is that we're actually reinforcing it, and so that's not to push it away and say, I don't want that thing. But just to be able to get it out and look at it and say, well, what do I believe about this then? Where does that belief come from? Why do I feel that way about it? And okay, so if I don't want that, what do I want in its place? And that's where I'm going to put my attention. And it's not rejecting the thing that's giving the contrast. And I think there's so much coming up at the moment that's really unhealthy for us. I was talking I did a session with somebody today, and it's, it's like somebody's put had a big poo and put it on the table, and it's like, there it is. There's this big poo, and you've got to clean it up. You can't ignore this. It's become the stuff that's going on around the planet it's been going on for centuries.
Absolutely.
And we've been building on it and building on it and building on it and going really in such a destructive cycle. And for me, it's like somebody squeezed on a big abscess and, getting rid of all this stuff that's been hidden. And as uncomfortable as it is, and as gruesome as it is, and smelly, and, you can go, okay, well, I can't ignore this anymore. I've got to make some changes. And so writing the book, for me, it was all about saying, well, this is how we make those changes. These are some really simple steps to say, okay, well, there's this thing this pile of poo. I don't want this. So where am I going to look now? And how do I move from that place of, and sometimes we don't even know what it is we want. We just know, I don't want that. It's like anything, but not that.
I love how the press packet that I received about your book said, I wanted to create a book of all the basics that I found incredibly useful, that wasn't weird, woo-woo, or full of religious dogma.
Yeah.
We're talking about really useful, really basic, really helpful, right? That's not...
And yet there are so many fabulous teachings, the Sufi teachings, the Christian mystics, all the Hindu teachings. But they all basically boil down to the same teachings. If you, it's just the different cultures interpret them in their own ways, and then and I had huge resistance to the whole God word, and but the core of what they're all teaching just felt right to me, and it works. It works, and they're all basically the same. And it's very, very simple principles for living.
What do you take as the core of these teachings?
We create our reality with our thoughts and with our emotions. We move energy. Every thought we have has a frequency, has a vibration. We have this impression that we live in this solid world, and it's not. Nothing is solid. And it still blows my mind that I'm sat on this chair, and how on earth is that just molecules vibrating? And they say today it's not even just molecules vibrating. Even the molecules, they think, are just fields oscillating. And it's like, how is that? But apparently this is...
I believe it was Einstein who said that reality is just an illusion, albeit a persistent one.
Yeah.
That it is just an illusion.
It's an amazing illusion. And it's fun, and it's fun to play with this stuff as well. We take it so seriously, but, once you start getting the hang of some of these principles, then you can play with it.
So let's talk about some of these techniques that you put in your book. How easy are they?
Easy. Very, very easy. Because I wanted something that my mum's going to kill me. I wanted something that my mum could do.
I'm with you, sis.
She will. Yeah, she'll probably shoot me tonight. But no, I wanted something. I say they're easy. They're not. They're simple.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They're simple. They're not necessary. I still have to keep pulling myself. In fact, my kids and my husband now are the first ones to say, you know that thing you wrote in your book? Why don't you do it? I'm better than I was, but I still, I've had 54 years of not doing it, or maybe less now. But, I had the vast part of my life, I had no clue. So we've had a lot of unlearning to do. But so it's easy, but they're simple, but not easy.
Right. And old habits die hard. I mean, our general preset is to go back to our old ways. It takes some training. It takes some remembering, and it takes some conscious effort. to make these new neural pathways so that we can take on new.
It's like playing guitar, isn't it? If you want to be a good guitarist, it's just repetition, and eventually you just go to where you need to go, or karate, or whatever it happens to be. You can, if you repeat something enough, then it becomes innate, and I think. My go-to these days is Reiki. If I stung my hand, in fact, I've become very lazy. If I'm gardening, I very rarely put gloves on, because if I get the sting, I'll quickly I'll give myself, it's become my go-to. It's the first thing that I think of. And my reaction these days is straight away to say, why do I feel that? So, to start asking those questions. Why have I got this discomfort? What's that telling me? It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just moving me in a different direction.
Absolutely. So these these methods, I should say, are simple, but they're not necessarily easy. They're things that you've collected over the years, it sounds like. Things that you've just come across that said, oh, that was useful. Oh, that was useful.
Yeah. And from all sorts of different traditions, and I really wanted to make it. I didn't want it to be culturally, just for one person. There's teachings in there from Sufis, from Native Americans, and Muslim teachings, and all these different practices. I really wanted to, but again, it's very, very. It's all about cultivating awareness. That's the key. It's what is going on inside of me. What's my inside? What's going on in my inside world? And how is that affecting what I'm seeing in front of me?
I love that. So when you say that thoughts are things, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, there quite a lot of the teachings actually say that thoughts are as much a part of the material world as physical reality. They have a texture and an energy, and they create a vibration when they move, when they're in action. They create an energy which we would then call emotion. It's energy moving which creates a sensation in our body, which we say this is an emotion. So you always have an emotion associated with a thought, but a thought is it's just finer. It's more spacious. It's less visible, but it's nevertheless part of the material world. So for me, it's like you have this. The denser and more contracted it is, the more solid it is, and the more spacious it is, the more it's like spirit. They're constantly interacting with one another. We think they're my thoughts. Are they really my thoughts? I'm not convinced they are. Maybe I contribute towards them, but I think we're massively impacted by what's going on in the collective.
Yes, the collective unconscious and the collective consciousness as well.
Yeah.
That sometimes we have thoughts that think us rather than thoughts that we think.
Often, especially at the moment.
Oh my goodness, yes, there's so much going on right now. Oh,
but it's so exciting.
It is
because it's like what can we change? One of the techniques I teach is, I call it flipping. We just flip a thought, and so I'll see something I don't want, and it's like, okay, I know I don't want that. What do I want in its place? And most of the time I don't know. So the question is, how do I want to feel then? If I don't know, I know I don't want that government, for example. No, let's not get political. Let's not get political. Recently I've noticed that I'm feeling quite dissatisfied with where I'm living, and not hugely dissatisfied. It hasn't got to that point yet, but I'm just feeling that there are things that I'd like to change. And I was thinking about it, well, the community around me,
And again, you are not in England, you are in France.
In France. A lovely, beautiful, beautiful area, but I'm just ready for something new. And so I started thinking, rather than thinking, well, oh my God, they're all so boring, which you could say, it was like, well, how do I want to feel then? What sort of people do I want to have around me? And so I love to lose myself in just imagining, well, what's that feeling? It's like, oh, I want people around me that inspire me, and I want to have really juicy conversations with people, and I want to have fun. I want to laugh more, and so I can grow that. And it's like, I might not know what those people look like, but I know how I want to feel. I might not know what job I want, but it's like, well, how do I want to feel in this? I know, maybe you need your job to change and you don't know what that job's going to be. So you can't even start to focus on manifesting something. But you can say, oh, how do I want to feel?
Mm-hmm.
I want to feel, I want to have fun. I want to feel valued. I want to feel part of a team. I want to feel dynamic. It's got to be, I want to be excited. I want to travel, or I want to be more expansive. I want to feel light when I go to work. I don't want to go in thinking, oh, here we go again. So I think if we can focus on the feeling, and so you can flip things, or taking a belief about something, all politicians are corrupt. And I'll write them on a piece of card, and I'll cross it out. So, okay, maybe sit with it for a while and think, well, why do I believe that? It's hard to think differently in the face of the overwhelming evidence at the moment, but
Right.
but again, you can cross it out, turn it over, and say, well, what would I want in its place? And what can I see now that already exists that I can grow? So I can put something like, there are some amazing, very inspiring politicians. Yeah. And I'd like, there are some great leaders out there, and I'd love to see them taking the lead. And then you feel like you're contributing to the community as well. It's not just about, what am I going to get? It's like, it's fun. I see these situations that are pop up on Twitter or in your Facebook feed. It's like, what can I contribute to moving this, just nudging this in the right direction? Instead of getting stuck on that thing that is so hideous that we don't.
Feels so good when we can focus on something that feels better. And our entire outlook seems to change, for they're all just corrupt, they're all just in it for themselves, et cetera, et cetera. But when we can think that, no, there are some who really care about people. There are some who want to see everyone healthy and happy and succeeding. That just feels better. And then, we can use that feeling to create an even better feeling and a better feeling.
Yeah, and maybe take some action. If there's something that you want, actually then saying, well, what can I do? You become a bit, this woolly, when you start imagining stuff, I mean, better than anybody, I think, but when you start imagining things, it's very vague in the beginning. Mm-hmm. There's no detail on anything. And so you can start padding it out a bit, and, you might have this image that, I had a little exercise. I needed a new car, desperately needed a new car. I'd been stuck at home. We were sharing one, and my husband was working really long hours. So I had the car from 8:00 in the evening onwards, and on Sundays, which wasn't. So I remember thinking, I just want a little cheap run around, but I'd like to feel nice in my car. And so at the beginning, all I could think of was I had a steering wheel, this vague steering wheel. But then I sort of imagined, well, what was I seeing as I was driving? How was I feeling? Oh, how are the seats? And you can pad it out and have the detail, and then it puts you in a much better place to take action. And sometimes those nudges just come out of left field. Sometimes you have no way of imagining It's so far beyond your realm of experience. There's things that have happened that I'm doing now that I would never in a million years have it wasn't even on my radar. So, sometimes it's just about stepping into that space and saying, I have no idea, show me, excite me. It's like, surprise me, give me something, but in a nice way.
This or something better, right? The universe knows so much better than we do. But it's really going to be in our best interest.
So it is a really basic book, but it's multi-layered. I found, and it was a 3-4 in the morning book. So I used to come downstairs and write. I'd sort of wake up with bits in my head, and I come down and leave all the lights off and try and write by candlelight. So I stayed in that space, and I'm still gobsmacked that I look at it and I think, I didn't write this. It wasn't necessarily a channeled book, but and I obviously had a role in it, but it's far too wise for me. And I still go back to it. I get stuck and I turn open to a page and I think, oh, why didn't I think to do that? So it's a very simple book, but every time I look at it, I see something new in there. I'd write a bit about energy patterns and how energy moves and how it affects the weather and the atmosphere of a room and how we all feed upon each other and each other's energies. And,
you also write in the book about the rhythm of life.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. So in your opinion, how are we affected by the cycles of life and the seasons in this rhythm?
Oh, totally. I think everything is a cycle. You see it, whether it's everything's spinning, everything, the molecules and there's these toroidal patterns that take place.
Right. Greg Braden writes about that. The fractals.
Fractal time, yeah. Everything is these toroids, which is like the yin-yang symbol. That's what that represents. You have the dual torus that spins all the time, and different sizes. So some they move really, really slowly. And, slow things are quite cool and can be quite heavy. It's hard work. They're hard work, things that take a long time. And other things like are really, really fast and they get very heated. And you see these things, they play out at all scales, whether it's changing the chemicals in your body. We're seeing it at the moment with these are long planetary cycles and they're taking a long time to go through. Everything, and knowing when to wait. We're talking about the community and the maybe moving house. I know it's not necessarily the right time, but I've learned that everything doesn't have to happen on my timescale either. If I plant a seed of a tender plant, I don't want it to grow and to sprout just at the beginning of winter, because it will die off. Sometimes there's value in waiting. Things build pressure. The more we it's like pulling elastic band back. The more we want something, the more pressure that it's under, the longer we're waiting, the more we're yearning for it, then the more pressure is building up, and the more. So when you finally it gets released, it gets so much more momentum, and it becomes, we amplify it. So there's value in waiting. But not too long.
Yes, I love this image of this sweet release that comes from anticipation and pulling this elastic, and then you get so much more momentum than something that would be very quickly manifested. And then what's the next?
And we'd be so bored with it, wouldn't we?
Oh,
it's like, I can have that, and I can have that, and this would happen. It's like this. There'd be something quite cool about that, just for a little while.
a strong anticipation, you know.
But the more you're in that space, I think the quicker things, the little things come very, very quickly. The synchronicities. Even if it's just silly things like you drop your pen and you're feeling in a really good place and somebody turns up 2 minutes later saying, "Oh, I've just found a pen. Would you like one?" It's just but when you start noticing these things, most of the time we don't pay any attention. We don't even notice. But when you start becoming aware of, and how your emotions drive things and how these big cycles like the planets moving, I can be lying in bed and I'll feel, I might feel really irritable and I haven't even got out of bed yet. I haven't put my feet on the floor, but I'm like, and then I go, okay. And I've got an app on my phone now. I'll go, oh, where's Mars right now? Oh, I see.
Oh, yes.
But I had no idea how I was impacted. I really was clueless about how the movement of the planets and the moon affected me emotionally. People talk about it and we all know about the full moon, but I was oblivious that. So I was just constantly reacting to these triggers, these triggers in the atmosphere, and we don't have to. Or we can have a trigger and we can say, oh, it's there, but there's another way I can use that. I don't have to be angry and irritable. I could start a new project, or I could take an action, or I could be courageous. I don't have to go and, thump my husband. So it's a choice. It's the same energy, but you have a choice about how we use it. But you have to be aware of what's going on before you start. You have to notice, and then you can choose. But most of us don't notice. We just go through life being triggered, and it hurts.
It does. It does. But what I love about your book. It is practical, and it is to use your phrase, not woo-woo. But it is very practical about how we can get ourselves out of these cycles, how we can, and basically it's a self-help book.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote it. I've struggled with depression on and off for years, with various addictions, and just human, just human, and it really helped me. And I think that the key thing is understanding that there's like this. What I struggle with so hard to find language for this stuff. This substance that we're made of, this stuff of life. It's a frequency thing for me, and it's like there's this frequency of love and compassion that holds everything together, and that's like this pure benevolent. It's always there. We remove ourselves from it all the time, but it's always, always, always present. And the minute we allow ourselves to just open to that, everything else just balances itself out. It's like hitting a tuning fork and everything else just comes back into. For me, it's the dominant frequency of the universe. And that is really the key, is, about being loving to yourself and loving towards other people, and knowing that whatever you put out comes back, that Taurus energy comes back absolutely amplified. So it's about being really conscious about what we're, not karma in a bad sense, but, what am I contributing to this stuff of life, to this fabric of life? It's like a big ocean of consciousness. What's my little contribution to that? And how can I keep it moving in a, not without ignoring all the dark stuff, because I think that's that spiritual bypassing is dangerous too. But but what can I do to keep uplifting and keep us all moving forward? And it's fun.
And it is Fun, yes, it is fun. It is fun because we get to play with it. And
Yeah.
we get to effect change. We get to be the driver in many ways, but also be the spectator in others. But what I love about this work is that, I mean, kind of like the premise of the book and the movie, The Secret, this information has been out there in plain sight, hidden in plain sight in so many different ways, waiting for us to rediscover it.
Yeah.
So something I wanted to ask you about, are there any of your favorite exercises or techniques that you could maybe share with us?
Yeah, well, I love the flipping one that I told you about. I really enjoy that. And I will quite often, I like to set an alarm. It's so simple, but I like to put an alarm on my phone. So it goes off every hour, every half hour. And I'll just say, what am I thinking at the moment? Really, what am I thinking about? And just notice. Don't need to do anything. Just notice. No judgment. Just become aware of what is going on in here. Because most of us don't. We don't even notice. And what very quickly becomes blatantly obvious is like, oh my God, I'm doing that thing again. and it's very rarely positive. And so once you become aware of what you're thinking, then you can start thinking, well, actually, how would I like my thoughts to be? And how would I like to steer these things? And what do I want to engage with? There's going to be, the thoughts arise. Yes. And they just arise. We can't control them, but we can choose whether we want to engage with them or not. Absolutely. You can acknowledge them, you can let them be there, and it's like, okay, let them pass on through. And I love, so simple, but every morning I start with a gratitude. I start my day with the 5 precepts, because that's what I learned when I started Reiki. But it anchors in my mind. So it starts an intention for the day, and it reminds me every day that, I don't want to be angry today. Today I choose not to carry anger around with me. It's not saying I won't get angry about unjust situations, but I won't carry it I don't want to just keep being angry for months on end like I've done in the past. And today I'm not going to worry because it achieves nothing. So I set these 5 precepts. Today I'm going to be grateful. So simple, but I'm going to practice appreciating. I want to save a life. I'm here in a body on a planet, and it's great having this spiritual life, but hey, I want to play as well. I want to contribute. So I'm going to be grateful. And today I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to be true to my way and my being. I'm not going to try and contort myself into a million different pieces just to please somebody else or to fit into somebody's idea of what I should be like. It's about what works for who's Peter. We're all unique, and what works for one person doesn't work for somebody else. So what's my authentic self? And being compassionate as well. So to myself and as much as to other people, because I can be so mean to myself.
We are so terrible to ourselves so many times.
Yeah. So I say that every morning, and then before I go to bed, I do the same thing. But that's more of a stock check. It's like, okay, so how did I do there then today? Okay, and celebrating the times that it went well. It's like, oh yeah, that guy was an arse. And, I actually managed to find a bit of compassion for him. I didn't like what he was doing, but I could kind of see that he'd got himself upset, and I didn't get fired up by it, or, so celebrating the things that go well as berating yourself for all the things, and then starting again. And so I start with my 5 precepts, and I do a gratitude journal first thing. Anything I can, because I know that I have a natural disposition to be a poor me. I'm a classic poor me if I let myself get away with it. So it's like, okay, well, what can I do to at least start my day off thinking, do you know what? Before I get out of bed, if I can, I'll lie in bed and I will think about something that I have to look forward to before I put my feet on the floor. It's like, what have I got that I feel good? And it might just be, my pillow feels nice. That might be it. It's like, I don't want to get up and go anywhere. I just want to, but I have a nice duvet. It's like, I'm cozy here. It's nice and warm. And, if it's just that, anything I can latch onto that starts my day off with me feeling lighter and more expansive.
So easy, so simple, and so easy to overlook.
Yeah, we don't do it.
We don't. It's like,
some of us, some do.
Some do. But most of the time it's like, all right, get up. Okay, let's see. Let the dog out. Start the coffee. Do some dishes from last night. We're on automatic pilot.
Yeah. No, my day is, what was I dreaming? What did I just dream? Just stay with that. Get the iPhone out. It's like, quickly, let's make a few notes on my phone about what was that thing? And then it's like, okay, what's today got in store? Okay, let's, come down. And I just have my little ritual, and it's not very sophisticated. It's certainly not formal. I'm there with my coffee in my hand and I'm still bleary-eyed, but I do get down on my knees. Somebody encouraged me to do that early on, but that's mainly... I do because, and it's not a formal religious thing, it's because I really struggle to be humble. I struggle with humility, and I think it just kind of puts me, just makes me realize that I'm part of this huge, huge universe. So I get down and I do my 5 precepts, and I'll stretch a bit of stretching, but very, very, I have a very casual approach to energy work, and I mean, I'm no less reverent for it. I'm absolutely in awe of what's available to us. I'm just in awe of the universe and that God, whatever you want to call it. I am blown away by life. Yeah.
Well, your book is Ancient Teachings for Modern Times, and it encourages self-awareness, simple practices that we can put into place to become more in awe of life and have an easier time on this planet. Where can people connect with you and find out more about your book and more about your work? Do you have a website?
Yeah, it's my name, petamorton.com. It's all lowercase, and it's PETAMORTON.com, www.petamorton.com. And I've got courses on there, Reiki courses. I'm going to be doing some intuitive development courses, and just about to launch a course that linked to the book as well. So we're just getting together. I had planned to it on a tour. I had courses booked all around Europe, but I'm just been shifting them all online. But they're no less effective. So we've had a bit of a trial run, and people have loved them. And really, there's something really juicy about sharing experiences with people, and hearing about other people's successes as well. It sort of inspires everybody to keep going.
You're also on Facebook.
Yeah, you find me on Facebook. You'll often find me having a rant on Twitter, doing everything I say not to do. But Facebook definitely. There's an author's page and just a normal. I'm very open. So,
and you do, of course, Reiki sessions with people, And astrology consultations. That's fascinating.
Well, just started with the astrology. I've been learning only about 4 years now, but pretty seriously learning. So I've just started doing natal consultations and, basic consultations, basic questions for people. Love it. Absolutely. Because it gives me a language which describes what I'm feeling going on underneath my hands during sessions or in my body. It sort of describes.
You seem to be very clued in to the movements of the planet and very sensitive to them as well. So that really only makes sense that you pull the astrology in as well.
Really, really, how it affects our psyche is it and our emotional state. It fascinates me. So yeah, I've just started doing them professionally. I've been doing them sort of for friends and family, and people keep saying, "Oh, do us a reading," and so that's sort of taking a life of its own. Really, I hadn't seen that coming. It certainly wasn't on the careers list at school. But yeah, and distance sessions. I work a lot at distance with people all around the world, and with the Reiki, people feel it like they're sat in the room with you.
Yes, it's just as effective. I do distance Reiki as well. It's just as effective. And then you teach a class. It looks like a new class. It's a 3.5-hour workshop called Cultivating an Abundance Mindset.
Oh yes, yeah. So there's a couple of new ones that'll be going on in the next couple of days. I've just been waiting to get the dates up together. So
good for you. Good for you. And so again, the book is Ancient Teachings for Modern Times: The Way to a Rich and Deeply Satisfying Life. This book is available through Amazon, Kindle, e-readers, Barnes & Noble, or as they say, wherever fine books are sold. So, and you are published through O Books, which is a division of John Hunt Publishing. Wonderful. So many great guests I've had on this podcast. So, Peta, thank you so much for radiating curiosity with me. It's one of my favorite qualities, and it has just been so delightful to talk with you and learn more about your book.
Oh, it's really, really lovely to have been speaking to you, and thank you for having me on here. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Radiate Wellness is a community of holistic and alternative healers and consultants based in the Kansas City area, dedicated to helping you create spiritual, energetic, and physical well-being. To learn more about our practitioners, services, classes, and events, or to schedule an appointment, visit us at radiatewellnesscommunity.com.